Welcome to the Unpacking It podcast with Bryce Johnson. It's a show that unpacks sports, faith, and life with intriguing guests from the sports and entertainment world. Enjoy inspiring conversations and thought-provoking interviews. You'll hear stories from people that will inspire, challenge, and encourage you. Now, from the Unpacking It studios in Charlotte, North Carolina, uniting sports fans everywhere, here is Bryce Johnson.
Welcome to Unpacking It, where we unpack sports, faith, and life with intriguing guests from the sports and entertainment world. I'm Bryce Johnson. Hope you're doing well. Check out our website, unpackingit.com. While you're there, be sure to subscribe to our weekday email devotional. We call it Unpack This. Today on the show, we will be joined by Rusty LaRue. He's an NBA champion. He's in the Wake Forest Hall of Fame. And he spent 8 years in pro basketball. He spent time coaching at the college and high school level. And he's the second athlete in ACC history to play football, basketball, and baseball in the same year. So he played quarterback for the football team at Wake Forest, basketball as well, for all 4 seasons from 92 to 96. And he's now the chief operations officer at Dairi-O Restaurants in North Carolina. And so I had just a fascinating conversation with Rusty LaRue, and the timing of getting him on the show is crucial because the documentary that's coming out on ESPN, The Last Dance, is all about that 97-98 Chicago Bulls team that Rusty LaRue was on. He was a rookie, and I asked him what it was like, and he's got some cool insights and just some neat experiences to share with us today. And stick around at the very end. He'll say what he does with his NBA championship ring. Might surprise you a little bit. And then also I'll share some final thoughts at the end of the interview, kind of my recap of the interview. And then also I'll ask him about some of the players that he played with. And then also he's had just a difficult experience in the last 5 years as well. His family lost their oldest son, Riley, to a car wreck and just devastating. He was 19 years old. And so we'll ask him about that as well. But Rusty has a strong faith as he relies on the Lord, and so we'll hear about that as well. So let's jump right in. Here is Rusty LaRue.
Intriguing guests and inspiring conversations. This is Unpacking It with Bryce Johnson.
And joining us right now on Unpacking It is Rusty LaRue, an NBA champion and a member of the Wake Forest Hall of Fame. Rusty, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. And before we talk about the documentary and just kind of about your journey and your story, really, how are you doing and how is your family doing during this time?
You know, we're doing okay. We've been blessed. You know, everybody is healthy and safe at home. All my kids are obviously at home with us right now, and my mom is who is got a pulmonary fibrosis is holed up at her beach house down in Myrtle Beach. So we're all good, just hanging in there day by day, trying to get through it like everybody else.
Wow. And so how have things affected kind of your day-to-day, and maybe how is it impacting you the most?
Yeah, so I am Chief Operations Officer for Dairi-O Restaurants. We've got 8 restaurants here around the Winston-Salem area and a store down in Mooresville. So luckily we have drive-throughs, so we were able to keep our restaurants open, and obviously have done a lot of tweaks and changes and had to cut some hours and doing a lot of different stuff from a standpoint of implementing new procedures and safety and health of our staff and customers. But so that's been a process, but again, we've been lucky and blessed that we've got some great customers and staff who've been really pulling some extra weight and making sure we can serve our customers.
Oh, that's awesome. Very, very good to hear. And from a faith perspective, in maybe what ways has your faith driven your outlook in the midst of the pandemic?
Yeah, I think anybody who is calls himself a believer and believes in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, we understand that this is temporary, this world we live in, and it's a brief moment in our journey. And I've been through a lot in my life, and so it's one of those things where you just kind of take it in stride. You obviously pray a lot and try to lean on people around you, stay involved with community where you can, with technology and things like that, to stay involved in the church, and just try to do the best you can in the community you're in. I think it's also a time for people who are followers to really look at find needs in their community. We're called to serve other people, and there's a lot of people who need that right now.
That's right. No, I love that. And yeah, people are looking for hope, and they're looking for encouragement. And if we're clinging to the Lord during this time and we're finding our hope and encouragement from Him, then we can point those people to Him and ultimately, meet them in that place too. So that's a wonderful perspective from Rusty LaRue. Well, Rusty, I want to hear more about your faith journey in just a little bit, but I know as a basketball fan, I'm really looking forward to the Last Dance documentary coming up on Sunday about the team that you were a part of, and so I'm curious from your perspective, what are you anticipating the most from the documentary? I assume you'll watch it, but will you watch it? And is there something that maybe you're specifically wondering if they'll show or talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I will watch it. It's always be fun, I'm sure, with my kids, and don't know if my wife will sit through it, but we'll sit down and watch it, and I'm sure try to. Hopefully, they'll show a lot of practice footage, and I'll get on there a little bit, but. Yeah, it'll just be interesting to see the slant they put on the season. Everyone at the time knew it was called The Last Dance. We actually had shirts made up, and it was just an interesting dynamic, and obviously an unbelievable team and a lot of characters involved there. So I guess I'm just kind of interested to see what angle they take with it and kind of what they show.
So that team, because during that time I was young, a huge NBA fan, and I was one of many just fans of the Bulls. But what's so interesting, even looking back, that team was so likable, that there was such a following. You didn't have to just be in Chicago to be a fan. And when you compare that team even to the Golden State Warriors and the New England Patriots, or teams that have had a lot of success, you don't have the same likability. So why do you think that Bulls team was so likable?
I don't know. I mean, obviously Michael was a pretty transcendent guy, and I think now in the era of the Kobe's and LeBrons, and it always seems like now there's a lot of haters too. Like you said, I mean, you got they either love or hate you, and I think Michael back in those times was really kind of broadly not only respected but really loved by most fans. And on top of that, we had obviously a great group of supporting cast with the Scottie Pippens, and then the characters like Dennis Rodman who came along for the ride there at the end, and so it makes for a pretty eclectic group. And I think for the most part, people just really resonated with watching that team and the kind of greatness they put out there night in and night out.
Well, so as a rookie on that team, how did you fit in, and what was the experience like being a part of it, but then also just kind of having a front row seat to the end of the Bulls dynasty?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little surreal. I actually was in camp and got cut the last day of camp and went to Idaho Stampede at the CBA for a couple weeks before I got called back up, and obviously played a little bit for a stretch while Steve Kerr was hurt, and then spent a lot of the year on the injured list. But just to kind of be, in the day-to-day of that and get to see how those guys work and really learn how to be a professional basketball player with that crew was really special. I obviously didn't have a ton to do with them winning it, other than being a pretty steady practice body and competing day in and day out to try to make myself better and everybody else better. But it certainly for me was one of those things that, as a player, invaluable to just see the work ethic and what it took for those guys to do what they did on a daily basis.
Because what was your perception of Michael Jordan or even the team overall before becoming a teammate and a member of the Bulls compared to when you actually got there and were a part of things?
Yeah, I mean, I was always a big Michael Jordan fan. I grew up in North Carolina. It's hard not to be when you do. And I don't know that I had a whole lot of perception before I got there. I had been around a lot of successful players at Wake and a lot of really good players at Wake, so I think I had a pretty good idea of what to expect. And I guess the difference, the thing I didn't expect was maybe just, how welcoming everybody was. I was really accepted and brought in. I think you kind of feel like, you hear some stories sometimes of, Michael can be a pretty tough guy. And I don't know if it's because I was a North Carolina guy or a multi-sport athlete or because he knew I was a competitor, but, I always felt really welcomed on the team when I was there.
Oh, that's cool to hear. And then also just kind of traveling with the team and being a part of, which I imagine every city you go into, the fans and all that. What was that like, just kind of seeing that front row seat as well? Yeah,
it was crazy because I know we would roll into, NBA teams travel after games. So we would finish a game and get on a plane and roll into a city at 12:30, 1 o'clock at night. And there'd be, 200 or 300 people lined up at the hotel to just, hope to get an autograph or a picture. And I can remember Judd Bushler and Steve Kerr would say, Rusty, it's not like this anywhere else. This is not reality. It's not like this everywhere. So it was amazing. I mean, we would pull into D.C. to play in Washington on a Wednesday night at 1:30 in the morning, and there would be, hundreds of people there to try to see the team and meet the team. And it was just, it was kind of, like I said, it was crazy just from the amount of the fan. And I think everybody kind of at the time knew it was the last year too. I can remember Jordan's last game in the, in the Coliseum, in the Garden in New York, and he wore his Jordans again and all that kind of stuff. You just kind of had a sense it was the last year, so I think that kind of played into all the hype and the fan support.
And you mentioned the different characters and lots of guys on that team that were recognizable. But Dennis Rodman, for me, he's always been just one of the more intriguing people just in the world. And I watched his documentary last year that came out, and always, I don't know, just kind of had a heart for him, I guess. What was your experience like with him? And what's, I don't know, maybe something that we don't even realize that maybe you learned just by being around him?
Well, one is, Dennis is an elite athlete, and he's a really hard worker. He does party quite a bit, but he was always in the gym. He always stayed after practice lifting weights. Very quiet guy, believe it or not, kind of kept himself. When I first got called up, and I don't even remember if in camp he even said anything to me, but I can remember the first time I felt like he kind of acknowledged me is when we were playing at Phoenix I think it was my first game as a pro, and Jason Kidd had a breakaway, and I hammered him, trying to not let him get a layup, and then they called a flagrant foul on me, and I remember Dennis saying, "Hey, that good foul," and I was like, all right. So he acknowledged me. I guess I had to do something a little on the edge, to get his attention, to be a part of it. But one of those guys that I think everybody remembers him for all his time kind of at the end when it got a little crazy, but unbelievable motor, really high basketball IQ. Again, quiet guy, just kind of came in, did his work, put in the extra time, always was in the weight room after practice, doing his thing. Not really a group guy, but just kind of always doing his thing. And believe it or not, Bulls do Secret Santa every year, and they draw names to see who you have to get a gift for. And it was a $500 limit back then, and believe it or not, I drew Dennis's name for Secret Santa for Christmas. So that's maybe the question for all ages. What do you get Dennis Rodman for Christmas with a $500 gift limit?
So what'd you land on?
Well, I ended up he had a daughter. I bought him a silver money clip with his daughter's name engraved on it.
Oh, so, that's cool.
Yeah, so I was really hoping Michael would get my name because I'd heard the year before he broke the limit and bought Scotty a Ferrari for Christmas. So I was really hoping he would get my name, but it didn't work out that way. So.
Who had you then?
Scott Burrell.
Oh yeah,
had my name.
I remember Scott Burrell. He was a Charlotte Hornet player as well.
Yeah, he was actually a really good two-sport athlete himself. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he went to UConn, I guess.
Yep.
Very cool. Yeah, so many great names on that team, and you of course, a rookie, one of the role players on that team. Was there a player that you found to be maybe most underrated as a contributor on that team? Because we always know Jordan and Pippen and Rodman kind of steal the attention or the recognition, I guess.
Well, obviously Kerr was a big part of that team. I don't know that he got as much recognition at the time as he does now. being a coach, but he was such a, the Bulls always kind of had a guy like a Paxson or him or somebody even like me who could spread the court and make shots, and I think he was probably a little bit underrated at the time. And then I just think they had a bunch of guys, even like Luke Longley. I think Tony Kukoc. People forget about him. I mean, one of the best players ever to come out of Europe and played on that team. So I think a lot of people think about Scotty and Michael, but you had Ron Harper, who was maybe toward the tail end of his career, but also an unbelievable pro player. You think about all those pieces that put together. So there are a lot of guys that maybe were kind of seen as role players, but in their own right were really good players.
Yeah, Tony Kukoc. I was watching a replay of some game the other day, and he's really good. Like I almost forgot how tough he was of a player. So because he kind of came off the bench, and actually the game I was watching, he was filling in for Ron Harper, who was injured. But yeah, so the team was so loaded, which is just amazing to look back and think about all those guys on the roster, and you being one of them, and what a cool experience to look back on for me as a fan, but I'm sure for you as a player being a part of all that. My final, I guess, question about the Bulls is about Phil Jackson. So, he's an accomplished coach. What was maybe the one thing that you learned from him?
He had such an even keel about himself, being able to handle all the different personalities, and that's probably his biggest asset as a coach, was being able to, the Zen thing, just to blend different personalities and bring people together. But when I became a coach, I always wanted to be able to install confidence in my players. And I can remember, I think it was like second or third game I played. We were playing at the Clippers, and the game went into overtime. And I had ended up playing a lot because I was filling in for some injured people. And late in the game, and maybe it was even in overtime, I had an open shot and I kind of passed it up because I'm thinking, I'm a rookie and it's an overtime game. And the next time out, I remember us kind of going through the whole time out, and as I'm coming out, he kind of grabbed me by the arm and said, "Hey, if you're open like that, you got to take that shot, shoot it. If I ever see you not pass it again, I'm taking you out."
Wow.
That's one of those things where, you're a rookie, just instilling confidence in me to go out and play my best and to, bring my strengths to the table as part of the team was, I think, one of the things he did really well.
That's awesome. So cool to hear. And let's transition a little bit and talk about your faith journey as a follower of Jesus. And so where were you at in your faith journey when you were in the NBA and when you were playing professional basketball?
Yeah, I mean, I was a believer. I had come to the Lord when I was in high school between my sophomore and junior year. And, I'd always had a strong faith and was married at the time. And when I was with the Bulls, had one child. I had my oldest son, Riley, at that point. So, I was the homebody. It was even the next year during the lockout, we had Brent Berry was on the team, and he did these awards at the end of the year, and me and my laptop got voted best couple. That kind of tells you kind of what I did. I stayed out of trouble and kept my nose clean, and every team had a core group of guys. We had a chaplain, and we did chapel before games and things like that, and found a local church to be a part of while we were up in Chicago.
So that was you were able to still embrace your faith during that time, or how maybe challenging was it being an NBA player and still desiring to follow Jesus?
Yeah, I don't think I wouldn't say it was hard. I mean, it wasn't really something that was either talked about or discouraged. It was just kind of one of those things that was personal, and I think everybody knew that everybody kind of had their own personal walk that they were walking, and it wasn't really something that was like I said, I had to hide or anything at the NBA. I think most people just knew that's who I was and what I stood for.
Oh, that's neat. Well, so when you do look back at your journey, so it's been a long time since you made that decision to give your life to Christ. So what have maybe been the key seasons of life that have really strengthened or even challenged your faith the most?
Yeah, when I was in high school, when I came to Christ, I think part of it was I'm always been driven by performance, and I think anybody who's an athlete who strives to be their best, you can get caught up in your worth being whether you make or miss jump shots or throw touchdowns or interceptions. And so for me, when I came to faith, it was really the grace that Christ gives you, that, knowing that, I am who I am in him no matter how I play or how many games I win or what I do. It doesn't make me any less competitive. If anything, it makes me more.
Yeah.
Gives me the freedom to go out and compete, knowing that if I fall short, it's just a game, and the sun will come up tomorrow, and I'm still who I am in Christ. So when I was younger, I think a lot of it had to do with the grace, and then when I was a pro athlete, it was really faith. Anybody who's a lot of people think I'm going to be a pro athlete. I was one of those pro athletes who had to find a job every year. I never had a multi-year contract, and being able to know, have the faith that, God was going to work it out for me and my family to find a place to play or find the next job, or when one season ended and go for a couple months without a paycheck, being able to have the faith that if something didn't pan out, that something else was going to come along, that I had, there was a plan for me in my life that he had a hand on. And then, more recently in the last five years ago, and I lost my son, in a car wreck. And I think now it's just hope. Hope gets me up every day and keeps me going.
Gosh, well, yeah, you mentioned the death of your son, Riley, and as you reflect on this 5-year journey of, being the father to the rest of your kids and your wife during such a difficult situation, what have you learned about the Lord during this time, and how has he sustained you, and in what ways has there been some good that has come from such a tragic situation?
For us, I think it's been, obviously it's hard. Anytime you lose a loved one, much less a child, is kind of hard to explain. We've been, the one thing you realize when things like this happen is that you've got a great God and a lot of really good people who come alongside you and help you through it. And we've seen that from day one, from the people who came over and prayed for us when it happened, to just, the people who still reach out to us and check on us and make sure that we're okay. And but I've been blessed that we had him for 19 years, and he left a lot of strong imprints on a lot of people while he was here. We try to honor him every way we can with everything we do, and going forward. And I think for us, it's just there's good and bad times. I think the one thing I would tell people is it's not, there's nothing anybody can say or do, or you just got to dig in and know that sometimes you're not going to know all the answers, but one day you will. And I have a lot of questions. I think people do, and I try not to get caught up in the questions, but just focusing on knowing that the answers will be revealed to me one day, and he's in a better place. So.
Amen. No, I appreciate you sharing about that. And let's go back to your basketball career a little bit. You mentioned just the faith that you needed to continue to persevere as a professional basketball player. And from my count, it was 10 different teams, multiple countries. And so what was maybe, because to me it's like, oh man, that's really hard, and the challenges of that. What was the best part of having that opportunity to play for different teams, different coaches, and even different countries?
Yeah, it's hard because my wife and I got married after my sophomore year of college, and then she had already graduated college, and then 18 months later we had Riley, and in our first 10 years of marriage we had 16 different addresses we lived at for more than a month. So my wife is a trooper and a saint, because some of those had to do with dragging 2 to 3 kids across the globe and across the country. So the hardest thing was just as a professional basketball player in particular. One of the reasons I chose basketball is just because there's a lot more places to play and make a living.
Yeah.
When we did it, I sort of got into it and said, hey, if I can put food on the table and we can make it work, I want to play as long as I can. And she was on board with that. And, blessed for me, I got to do it 8 years. And, the season ends in June, and then you got to make a decision in August. It's like, okay, do I take a job overseas for guaranteed money in a foreign country, making good money, or do I stay here with no guarantee to try to make an NBA team in September, knowing that if I get cut from that team, I'm going to be playing in the minor leagues making, $20,000 for the year. And so those are hard decisions to make, and you just got to try to make them the best you can, and try to do what's best for your family and your situation at the time. And I was always blessed that when I I tried to kind of do it every other year. I would stay in the States for a year and try to get caught up. And if I felt like my NBA opportunities weren't there, I would go overseas and try to make some money for a year.
Gosh, what was the best spot overseas for you?
Well, I did a month in Paris, which was nice, and then
Cool.
Probably Italy was the best. I played in Italy, although I was hurt a lot of the season. We lived in Varese, just north of Milan. Beautiful place. The living was pretty good. My other long stint was in Russia. We lived in Moscow, about 15 minutes from the Kremlin, for a year. But probably Italy was the best, just from a living standpoint and for my family.
Yeah, so following your playing career, you did end up getting into coaching, and you were an assistant coach at your alma mater at Wake. You were a head coach at Greensboro. You're also coaching in high school. But then ultimately you got into the restaurant business. So take me into kind of that transition of how you ended up getting into coaching, and then ultimately how you landed in the restaurant business.
Yeah, I'd always been told I'd be a good coach because I was kind of a player coach type of deal when I was playing. And when I ended up getting out of playing, I had some job offers overseas, and my daughter was going to be born in August. It would have been it was my fourth child at the time, and I had been hurt the last couple of years. I'd played quite a bit, so I got a Greensboro College kind of called me out of the blue. A friend of mine who actually played there called and said, "Hey, they're looking for a coach, and they would like to interview you." And I kind of had not wanted to get into coaching just because it was a lot like playing, and to move up, you got to kind of pick your family up and move them to the next best job, right? You got to move up the ranks and work long hours, and I just was kind of like, So when it came along, the opportunity to try it and see if I liked it, in Greensboro, I kind of jumped at it and did that for a year. And then I moved over to the high school for Side Country Day and I had started the basketball academy back when I was a pro and with my brother, and we were doing camps and lessons and all that. So we kind of ran that out of the high school for a while before I got the chance to go to Wake, and did that for 5 years. And that's a grind. And college coaching is unforgiving, and we lost a lot of games, and that's a tough deal, especially when you're at your alma mater. When you're putting your heart and soul into it and spending hours and hours and hours. And, I look back now, and that was really Riley's whole high school career I was at Wake, and I missed, I missed pretty much his whole high school career, coaching other kids, watching other kids play in high school instead of my own. And so that was when all that went down, and I didn't get retained at Wake. I had some basketball opportunities, but I just felt like it was time to move on. I didn't want to move my family. I had 2 kids in high school at the time, and started looking at other opportunities and, financial. And I was always been an entrepreneur, and I met the owner of Dairi-O. We actually have at all of our locations on Wednesday mornings, we actually have a men's Christian group. We feed free breakfast too. And it's called Wednesday in the Word. Stu Epperson, who does Christian talk radio here in the Winston-Salem area.
I know Stu.
And is a basketball guy,
if
you know him. He invited me to it one day. I had been to it at another place, but he invited me to it. And the former head of school at Forsyth said, "Hey, you need to meet the owner. He heard you're looking for a job." And so I met Jeff Speaks as the owner, and we talked for a couple of weeks. And he said, "Hey, I've got a lot in Kernersville. I want you to be my first owner-operator and would like to bring you on board. I really want to grow the business." And at the time, he had 3 restaurants going to open 4. And I said, the more I got to know and see and the business, and we're a Christian business, that it was a great fit for me and my family. And I jumped on board, and I trained and worked for a year, and then ran the store in Kernersville as the owner-operator for about 2.5 years. And then when I stopped coaching my boys in high school, when they graduated, I moved up here to the corporate office, and I've been up here for the last 2 years as chief operations officer, helping to run, now 8 locations. So it's been a blessing. It really has. I've got it's a great company and a great group of people. We really do a great job with what we do, and it's been great for me and my family.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, next time I'm up there, I definitely have to stop by Dairi-O. I've never been there. So what's kind of your go-to thing that you order?
Well, it started as a walk-up hot dog and ice cream stand back in the 50s, and Jeff bought it back in 1993. And so we're really known for our hot dogs.
Okay, nice.
Buttered and toasted buns, but we got a great burger. We do a little bit of everything. We got wraps, salads, veggie burger, wings. We do 32 flavors of ice cream. So It's kind of, we call it fast casual, but if you like hot dogs, it's hard to beat. Our 2 hot dog special is 2 hot dog combo is pretty good. It's what we're kind of known for. But yeah, we're blessed, and we've got a really strong group of staff, a great group of managers who really work hard every day to try to take care of customers and make sure we're doing our best for the community.
I love it. Hot dogs and ice cream. That's right up my alley. So that sounds
yeah, you can't get better than that.
Sounds delicious. Well, Rusty, man, it's been awesome talking with you. And final thought, as I was reading, I read that you don't necessarily wear your NBA championship ring. So is that true? And so where is it then?
Yeah, so I keep it locked up. I never wear it. I've probably worn it once or twice in the last 2 or 3 years if I go somewhere to speak and just feel like I need to wear it. But, it's like I told my kids, basketball is what we do. It's not who we are. And the championships are great. I'm blessed. I mean, there's been a lot of unbelievable players who played the game who didn't get a chance to win one. I don't necessarily think it makes me any better than them because I've got it. It was something that I had a great opportunity to be a part of. But, it goes in the trophy case with all the other trophies, and then I get up today to try to be better today than I was yesterday.
There you go. I love it. I've got my fantasy football ring somewhere, but same philosophy. Same philosophy. No,
I hear you.
Well, Rusty, really, really appreciate it and wish you the best with your business and Dairi-O Restaurants and with your family, and continue to stay healthy during this tough time. And thank you for just sharing your heart and faith journey with us today on Unpacking It.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. There's Rusty LaRue joining us here on Unpacking It.
Intriguing guests and inspiring conversations. This is Unpacking It with Bryce Johnson.
That was fun. Really appreciate Rusty LaRue coming on the show and reminiscing with us just about that final season with Chicago, and just hearing about Rusty's career is really fascinating too, and to think about all he accomplished on the college level, and then to play professionally for 8 years is very significant. And you got to think, though, your first year is a rookie with Chicago, like your first chance in the NBA, and you're playing on Michael Jordan's Bulls team. I mean, that's fascinating. So it was fun to hear some of those stories, and he spoke pretty highly of Dennis Rodman, or at least focused on the positives of Rodman. And I don't know why I'm drawn to Rodman the way that I am, but I just always, I guess on one end, had a fascination with him, but just a heart for him, because I just think he's a sad guy. I think because even Rusty was talking about how he was just kind of to himself and quiet. I think that's who he really is, and then he puts on this show, and kind of what the public sees isn't truly who he is, and he's just acting out like he's a 15-year-old, 20-year-old kid, and then but really he's a 35-year-old NBA player, or I think still 50-year-old, 60-year-old. He's got to be pushing 60 now. Anyway, he's one of those interesting players on that team, but so many dynamics to that roster when you look back at it. And so that's what's going to be so cool about the documentary. Hearing from guys like Bill Wennington, and thinking back on Luke Longley, and like I said, Tony Kukoc, he was good. He would be even better in today's game. He really would. And just his smoothness and the way he played, and like his stats, if you look back, his stats aren't like out of this world, but he was really good. And there wasn't a lot of room for him, to do that much, because Pippen and Jordan, of course, dominated the ball. And so the Bulls teams weren't necessarily putting up huge numbers either. Like 90s basketball wasn't, what we see with the Houston Rockets, or some of these teams that are shooting a ton of threes. It just wasn't like that. Kerr would shoot a couple threes a game. I mean, Jordan would shoot a couple threes here and there, but he wasn't like draining threes all day long like Steph Curry and those kind of guys. So it's just a different style. So a lot to take away from that conversation and some of the fun stuff, but also, it's a heavy conversation to listen to a father talk about losing his son. It's hard for me as an interviewer to know what to ask and how much to, dig in. I can't even imagine, now that I'm a father, the idea of losing a child is the worst possible thing. I would absolutely much rather lose my own life than having to go through that pain. And so, you hate to even hear or know that parents are going through that, and it's just brutal. But to know that Rusty and his family are clinging to their faith and trusting the Lord through these last 5 years since they lost their son in a car accident, and just devastating. So there's a lot there, but thankful to at least hear just about Rusty's journey and basketball and beyond. So thankful to him, especially the week leading up to the documentary. Yeah, everybody's trying, I want to interview Jordan. I want to interview Rusty LaRue, because there is no perspective like his when you think about a rookie on that team. His first experience with the NBA is Michael Jordan and the Bulls. You got to love it. It's great. So really cool to talk to him. Thanks to you for listening. As always, I'm a sports fan who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, I have been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well, and I hope you'll join me as we live life as sports fans who follow Jesus together. Have a great rest of your day, and be sure to check out some of our upcoming podcasts. Scheduled guests include Jonathan Bender, former NBA player, Brett Kern, the punter for the Tennessee Titans, and we're working on a few others as well. So thanks for tuning in, and we appreciate you sharing this podcast. We appreciate you rating, reviewing, and sending us emails. Bryce@unpackingit.com. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
For more information about the show, our events, and other resources, visit unpackingit.com. That's unpackingit.com. We hope you are encouraged, inspired, and challenged by what you heard today. To support our show and Unpacking It Ministries with a financial gift, visit unpackingit.com/donate. We look forward to unpacking sports, faith, and life with you again next week.